LinkedIn actually recommends 4 times a week if you are a newer creator. And I think they recommend that again for the consistency piece, but also to get people used to the fact that you are posting and that they can expect to hear things from you, right? If you post one post and someone sees it, but they feel like it's a one-off, they're probably not going to follow you, right? But if you're doing it regularly and they realize, oh, Mary's posting 3 times a week and I like her stuff, okay, I'm going to follow or connect with her. So I think that's sort of where that recommendation comes from.
Before we start the show, I have a quick question for you. Is your resume stuck in the rejection pile? At Resume Assassin, I create powerful resumes that showcase your skills, experience, and achievements, getting you noticed by recruiters. I'll also optimize your LinkedIn profile, transforming it into a magnet for opportunity. Visit resumeassassin.com today and take charge of your job search. Visit resumeassassin.com. Welcome to Resume Assassin Presents Recruiting Insider, where I create a safe space to have candid conversations with recruiters and LinkedIn thought leaders. This podcast promises to inform, entertain, and inspire. Lorraine Lee, welcome to Recruiting Insider.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary. I'm really excited.
It's a pleasure. Lorraine is a global keynote speaker and instructor for Stanford Continuing Studies and LinkedIn Learning. She works with Fortune 100 organizations, global teams, and individuals to teach them how to supercharge their professional presence. Lorraine is recognized as a LinkedIn top voice and has more than 300,000 followers on LinkedIn and 10 years of experience leading editorial teams at top tech firms. She was named a top virtual speaker by ReadWrite, a top 15 LinkedIn expert in San Francisco by Influence Digest, and Lorraine was a founding editor at Prezi, SlideShare, and LinkedIn, and has been featured in publications including ReadWrite and Entrepreneur. Today, I'm so excited to discuss supercharging your professional presence on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has become, really much more than a job search site, right?
Yep.
And it's got more than 1 billion users, and, it seems like new features are being launched almost every single day. Like I just saw this new gaming feature, which is really cool, which I subscribe to.
Okay, nice.
And it can be super difficult, though, to know exactly where to start and where to stand out, right? So let's just kind of jump right into it. Many of our listeners are, they're trying to build that strong personal brand on LinkedIn, whether they're building a business or searching for jobs. What are some key strategies that they could use to optimize their profile so that they can appear in more search results?
Well, I love the thing you said before about how LinkedIn is not just a job site. So I think the first thing for listeners is just to be aware of that, right? The platform is really transformed to be focused on, as I like to say, content, community, and conversations. And so just seeing that there is such big opportunity out there besides, logging on just when you need a job, I think is the first piece. Now, as you said, the profile is really foundational. And so you want to tackle that first, get that right before you start doing all the other kind of fancy things that you can do on LinkedIn. So when it comes to your profile, there are 3 things that come to mind for me that are super important. So the first one is your headline. And a lot of people, when they are thinking about their headline, they're thinking just about their current job, right? So I am a marketer at company, or I'm a data scientist at company, but we are all much more than our jobs. Of course, it's important to mention our roles, but there are other things we do in our day to day, or there are things that we have done in the past that might be important. And to your point, like if you are looking for a job or looking to kind of meet with like-minded people, your headline impacts search results. So LinkedIn has 220 or gives you 220 characters to fill out. So that's a lot of space. And
sure.
So I want you to start thinking about, okay, yes, I can include my role in company, but what are those keywords and things that I want to be discovered for? So just think of the headline as sort of just optimizing LinkedIn search, sort of like Google search, but LinkedIn search. And then A second thing that I think a lot of people miss out on is the background photo.
Hmm.
And it is, I always say it's like the billboard to your
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Like literally, it's the biggest piece of real estate, it's at the top. And so many people, they either just use the default LinkedIn one, which is like nothing, it's just some sort of design, or they're like adding like a nature photo or something like that, but it doesn't tell me anything about you, right? Like those sort of stock photos are very generic, or if you're not putting anything, it just looks like you don't care about your LinkedIn presence.
Hmm.
And so background photos, I would say, are another really big opportunity area that a lot of people miss out on. And then the third thing I would say is probably, gosh, there's so many things you can do, but probably, I mean, again, if we're just looking at kind of the top part of your profile, which is
Yeah.
what's going to make the first impression, your profile photo. A
Hmm.
lot of people have photos that are too far away or that don't look quite professional, or there's like other people in the pictures, like cropped out. And so I think having a nice and clear profile picture, and that doesn't mean you have to go into a studio, like a photo studio, to take
Yeah.
your picture. You can take it on a cell phone. Portrait mode looks really nice in different settings. So just experiment. But we want to see you smiling. We want to see you. We want to see your face. So like don't be too far away. Zoom in on your face, and those are going to be really critical to creating that first strong impression.
Yeah, those are great tips, and they're easy. They can be implemented today
Yeah,
too, right? And
yeah,
I think that a lot of people don't really take a step back and think about their headline. Like you said, they may just say, I'm a people leader, or this is
mhm,
my title at this
yeah,
company, like you
yeah,
said, but there's a lot more that you really could say with your
yeah,
headline. And with so many characters, you can show, the impact even that you've made
yeah,
on within your career, within your current company, or throughout the entire trajectory of your career.
yeah,
And I think,
definitely.
yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right too with that the background photo too is really important because that can really start to communicate your personal brand and the value proposition, what you bring to the table.
Yeah,
How are you unique? Who are you? That's a great way, and it's a first impression too. Like
mhm,
you said, it's that billboard.
yeah,
So it's a great way to start thinking about your personal brand and how to communicate that.
yeah.
So I guess along those lines, then I'm curious, how could we better communicate our value proposition and really accurately represent who we are?
Mhm. I think when it comes to our value prop or our personal brand, it just, again, I keep always going back to mindset, but the first thing is to realize that we all have a personal brand, and whether you are proactive about it or sort of leave it to chance or just
Yeah.
not really thinking about it, you still have one. And so the first thing is to realize that you have control over it. So I often sometimes call it career brand because I feel like personal
Hmm.
brand, sometimes people have negative
Yeah.
connotations to that, but career brand, we all are trying to grow in our careers or reach certain goals, right? So just knowing that you can be proactive about it and that you can sort of inform those conversations that happen about you when you are not in the room, or that help you, stay top of mind when you're posting on LinkedIn. That's a really important piece that I just want to
Hmm.
set the
Yeah.
stage for in terms of just how you think about it. And one of the things, exercises I like to do when I go into companies and do trainings on the concept of building a brand at work is to write down adjectives for how you would currently describe yourself or how coworkers might describe you. And then it's a very simple exercise. And then you think about, okay, what are the adjectives or ways that I would want people to describe me in the future? And I think a lot of people, when I do this exercise, they're like, oh, I don't actually know how people
Yeah.
describe me
Right.
or something. So that's just the first prompt to be like, oh, I should start talking to people and figuring that
Yeah.
out. But if you do know how you currently are being seen, it's just a good thought exercise to think, okay, what is the value I provide? How do people describe
Yeah.
me? What is the impression I leave behind? What is my reputation, right? Career brand is essentially reputation. And then as you think about, okay, this is what I want in the future, that helps you figure out the steps you need to take, or the classes you need to take, or the mentors you need to get to sort of help you shift over to that ideal future state.
Hmm.
But to your point, just starting off, what is my value prop now? How do people currently see me? That is a really great exercise. And then if you don't have the answer, talk to 10 to 15 colleagues, your manager, and even friends and family, I think is a helpful starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've never really gone through an exercise like that, and I bet a lot of people haven't either.
Yeah.
Like what am I really communicating to
Yeah.
people? What are those adjectives that really describe me? And I think that I could probably think of a few for myself, but if I think about how would other people describe me, like you said, I'd probably be like, I really have no idea. So just
Yeah.
something as simple as starting a conversation with your colleagues, with your, talk to your significant other or, anybody else in your family and see how they would describe you. And they probably would give you some insights that you're like, I wouldn't have thought about that myself,
Yeah.
So I think that
Exactly.
that's amazing advice, And I was thinking about, how I've been on LinkedIn since 2008 and I really didn't start posting any content at all
Okay.
until
Yeah.
this year.
Okay.
And
Nice.
really, yeah, I mean, I'm kicking myself for not doing it and for waiting for so long, because there's a lot that I feel like there was a lot that was holding me back. And I think that a lot of people can probably relate. Like, people literally I've seen posts where people are like, I was shaking before I
Yeah.
hit the
Oh
post
gosh.
button,
Yeah.
right? Because it's
Yeah.
that personal, you're getting personal on a platform that originally, was maybe more intended for, job searching. And it can be intimidating. It can be embarrassing. There can be some, shame that's attached to it for putting yourself out there, especially when you're like me, when you're just, a very reserved person and you have a hard time letting
Uh-huh.
other people in.
Yeah.
So, what are some best practices or maybe, frameworks or something like that for creating engaging LinkedIn content that
Yeah.
really does actually resonate with your
Mhm.
target audience?
Well, first, I just want to say, Mary, like you are doing a great job on
Oh,
LinkedIn. I'm seeing your
thank you.
comments like popping up in my feed. So for just starting this year, I feel like you're very engaged and just really leading in. So that's awesome
Thank
to
you.
see. Because to your point, it can be a very nerve-wracking thing. It's again
Yeah.
tied to our professional identity.
Yeah.
And I think the first thing I would say is that is a completely normal feeling. So I was a founding editor at LinkedIn. I worked there for 6 years, and even I was always very nervous
Yeah.
before posting. It wasn't even like my own original thought. It was
Yeah.
posting content that I was, a video
Right.
series I was hosting for LinkedIn, for example. So just know that even the people at LinkedIn get nervous. So it is a normal feeling, I think, just to
Yeah.
keep that in mind. It's, you're not alone. The second thing I would say is I think consistency is a really important first step because it is scary and you are likely not going to get a ton of engagement to start. People are not used to seeing you out there. They're not sure who you are, like what
Hmm.
your voice is, what you stand for. And I find that a lot of people drop off. They can stay consistent with it for a little bit, but it's hard, right?
Yeah.
It's you creating content and having to come up with ideas. So really staying consistent with it. And when I say
Hmm.
consistent, I don't mean publish 4 times a week. Like
Yeah.
that's gonna make you burn out so fast. I always like to say, set the bar really low. So even publishing
Yeah.
once a month, like
Hmm.
great, like you know, start with that. And you're probably going to realize, okay, once a month, no big deal. Let me try twice a month. And you
Hmm.
stay consistent with that and you just build up over time. So I think that is going to be really key to helping you be more comfortable because you do need sort of it's like any sport or new skill, you need the reps to get
Yeah.
comfortable and to really find your way. And so that's going to be a key piece over time that will get you engagement if you can stay consistent with it. And the second thing I would say is quality over quantity. There's a lot of algorithm reports and people sharing LinkedIn hacks, and there might be, some value and like they're taking a bunch of data. Maybe there's an insight here and there that actually is like, oh, okay, maybe the algorithm does seem to like this. But I always say, don't write for the algorithm. Write your personal
Yeah.
stories. Write with authenticity. Share who you are. Provide helpful information because the algorithm inherently again, if you're following me on LinkedIn, you'll see me talk about it a lot. The algorithm is literally like the definition of it is to learn and to
Yeah.
change and to adapt.
Yeah.
And so there's no point in chasing it.
Yeah.
It's something you can't win and you don't want to win it. Like it's not
No.
about being viral. It's about finding the audience that you can build relationships with, finding people who can maybe, depending on what your goals are, if you're a business owner who might become a client one day, right?
Yeah.
Just the vanity metrics are not really something that I think anyone should be chasing. And then the third thing I would say is that you don't have to post content right away to be creating content. So as I said, Mary, like something you do really well is you comment a lot and you provide helpful content and information in your comments. And I always say that comments are a really nice sort of lower stakes, lower pressure way
Yeah.
to get active on LinkedIn, to get involved on LinkedIn, because it's not a unique post coming out from your profile, but
Hmm.
getting your name out there, you're connecting with people, people will come to recognize your name, you'll grow your follower count that way. And so that's another really great way to just get started if you're feeling a little bit nervous. And I'm not sure if you started off with comments and then posted or like what the order was for things. I'd love to hear sort of how you thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started out with commenting on
Yeah,
other
nice.
people's posts, right?
Yeah,
And then, for me, I wanted to figure out what is my voice
yeah,
because, I write resumes, but I'm so passionate about the job search process as a whole. So I didn't want to feel like I was pigeonholing myself into one specific topic.
yeah,
And so for me, it's never been about chasing the algorithm because I completely agree that, of course, consistency is key, but also it's that quality over the quantity. And I see so many people on LinkedIn who they just post maybe a 2 or 3 sentence word response and it just provides no value at all. So
yeah. I'm like,
for
I
me
haven't learned anything new about you through that. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
right. So I mean, the only way that you're here speaking with us today is probably, I would imagine, is because, I took some time to think about what you
Yeah.
were posting, to relate
Yeah.
to you, to comment on some of your posts in a really meaningful way. And that's really important to me. It's about choosing some of the maybe top content creators on LinkedIn,
Mm,
following their
mhm.
posts, and then creating those really insightful and engaging comments, before you even start creating your own content. And that
Yeah.
was something that was really important. And then after I did that, I did figure out, well, I need to be creating my own content as well. That's also really important to really, start to become a little more personable, to create content that could, maybe attract a wider audience and relate to people on a different level. And so, the only way forward in my mind was to start posting content, even if it was outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so when I first started, I started pushing out as much content as I possibly could,
Uh,
and it was like a waste of time, honestly, in the beginning. I realized
yeah.
that LinkedIn it's different than like, Instagram or,
Yeah.
TikTok, where
Yeah.
maybe four original posts is,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
not going to be favorable.
Right.
So, and I know you kind of already touched on this, but maybe
Yeah.
you can go just a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
How often should we be posting on LinkedIn? I mean, and even, even further, what are maybe some time-saving tips for generating that consistent content?
Yeah, so LinkedIn actually recommends 4 times a week if you
Hmm.
are a newer creator.
Yeah.
And I think they recommend that again for the consistency piece, but also to get people used to the fact that you are posting and that they can expect to hear things from you, right? If you
Hmm.
post one post and someone sees it, but they feel like it's a one-off, they're probably not
Hmm.
going to follow you, right? But if you're doing it regularly and they realize, oh, Mary's posting 3 times a week and I like her
Yeah.
stuff, okay, I'm going to follow or connect with her.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of where that recommendation comes from. I think that can still be a lot for someone who also has a full-time job and they're not
Yeah.
necessarily trying to become, a quote unquote content creator or
Hmm.
influencer. It's a great goal to strive for.
Hmm.
Again, I would say consistency is the first part. So whatever you decide, stick with that. But I think, if you want to stay top of mind with your audience, like 2 to 3 times a week, I would say is a nice goal to shoot for. And then what was the other part of your question?
And maybe some time-saving tips
Oh yes,
to
time
be,
saving tips,
yeah.
yes. So one thing that I did when I had a full-time job is I would sit down every Sunday and say, okay, let me come up with 4 to 5 post ideas for the week.
Hmm.
And I do not recommend that because it's the weekend. You think you have all this time. It's
Yeah.
the weekend. I sit down. I'm
Hmm.
tired. It's Sunday from whatever I did over the weekend.
Hmm.
And then you have to just quickly come up with a few ideas. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you don't want to be sitting there for hours. So you're just coming up and just kind of writing whatever comes to mind. It's not always going to be the highest quality. So something I
Yeah.
shifted and changed once I started my own business is that I would sit down for, a few hours once a month and then plan out the content for the whole month. And so I would
Hmm.
have a content calendar. I have everything planned out. I have a Google Doc where I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I have themes for the day. For example, Wednesday might be like Wednesday work tips.
Hmm.
Mondays, I was at some point, publishing a lot of my LinkedIn learning courses, promoting those. Friday, Free Resource Friday. So it helps keep you on track. It gives you some structure, and then
Hmm.
planning ahead of time and just really getting in that mindset and focusing on it at one time versus breaking it up over different parts throughout your week when things get really
Hmm.
busy, I think is probably one of the biggest time saving hacks that I have had. And then
Hmm.
using a scheduling tool to plan it ahead of time. So I use a tool called Taplio. Sometimes I use the LinkedIn scheduler. So those are, helpful
Hmm.
tools that you can use to sort of expedite or just organize your publishing schedule a little bit better.
I tried to schedule some posts in advance. And so I was like 2 months out. I'd scheduled, I was like,
Oh,
yes, I
nice. Okay.
scheduled
Yeah.
2 months out. And then I was like, I realized that the algorithm doesn't
Uh-huh.
like websites, right? And so I'd posted my website because I had seen a bunch of people doing that on LinkedIn. So I was like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
This is where you can reach me. And so then I was like, don't do what I did, where you have to then go back and reschedule all of those posts on LinkedIn. So yeah, but I mean, I think that you're absolutely right. If you can find some time saving tips and once you kind of get in the groove and figure out, what you should post about, some different topics, schedule those in advance, and that can definitely save a lot of time. And the other thing
Yeah.
that I've done is just created a Google Doc where I just
Mhm.
kind of brain dump. So if I'm listening to a
Yes.
podcast or,
Yeah.
if I hear something and I'm like, oh, I love that, I'm going to write it down and maybe this will be a post,
Yeah.
for the future.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Once you start writing, ideas just come. Like you're
Yeah.
just everything you hear, you're like, oh, that's an idea. That's an idea. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
But
it's
if
good you
you
have a
just,
central spot for that. Yeah.
for
And
sure.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I would say too, like I sometimes have planned out a little bit more than a month
Hmm.
in advance as well. I will say I think a month is a good sort of time frame just because to your point, like things will come up. Maybe
Yeah.
you have a speaking event or a great idea came up, or you see something trending and you want to get on that
Yeah.
quickly. So I think it's good to also sort of stay agile and incorporate things as they come up.
Yeah.
So about a month is a good amount of time. Otherwise, you're gonna have to start moving things and shifting things, and it becomes
Yeah.
a little bit unwieldy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If I scheduled every single day out and then I was like, "Oh, I really want to talk about this, but now I
Yeah.
already have a post."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is kind of a buzzword I think on LinkedIn right now, but I want to dive into it just a little bit because I think that it's actually probably game changing when you use it in the right way. So the idea, and you already kind of alluded to it, but the idea is of, being authentic, right? So building those bridges instead of building walls, essentially. How can we use LinkedIn to build authentic relationships and really expand our professional network in a genuine way?
I think the first step, and this is a hard part, is sharing your story. And when I started posting on LinkedIn, or I guess after I left LinkedIn and I had to figure out what is my voice, I would post a lot of very tactical, sort of utilitarian
Yeah.
posts. So I divide content into three main buckets. So
Hmm.
personal, educational, professional. So personal, you're obviously sharing some sort of experience. Educational, how to do something or teaching someone a skill. And then professional is going to be more industry trends, things that are happening in the news, like future of work, things that you might comment on. And so I leaned very much on the educational, which is
Hmm.
not a bad thing. And I have a lot of things that I want to teach others.
Hmm.
But when I started adding in more of that personal, that is really when I, again, found my voice a little bit more outside of, being a LinkedIn employee, found my voice and also just connected with more people reaching out, resonating with my content, engaging with my content, especially when I talk about things like my layoff or me being an introvert. Like people
Hmm.
really love that because that's a personal story and it's me sharing a challenge or me sharing an experience that they have gone through as well. And so I think being open to sharing that, I think is key. I know a lot of people sometimes get nervous thinking, oh, what do I have to share that's different from someone else? Or, oh, I'm early in my career. I don't have anything to teach someone.
Hmm.
But something I say is that there's always going to be someone who's talking about what you are talking about on
Hmm.
LinkedIn. I mean, it's just the way of the world, right? There's always going to be quote unquote competition out there,
Hmm.
but we all have something that's unique to us, right? Like I can be an introvert, someone else can be an introvert. We're just going to have different stories and experiences
Hmm.
and ways of talking about it and ways of approaching it. And just to remember that and know that you do have a unique story and you do have a unique way of sharing things, and hopefully that can give someone some confidence when it comes
Hmm.
time to be more authentic and to get your voice out there. And I think once you start doing it and you start seeing people resonate with it, that
Hmm.
also gives you more confidence to continue
Hmm.
doing it. At least that's what happened with me. So I think
Yeah.
that can be really helpful in sort of finding your voice, getting comfortable sharing your voice.
Yeah. I've kind of gotten stuck in the, or at least originally when I started posting, I got stuck in posting the educational piece because I thought, hey, this
More
is a
comfortable, I
platform
think, to
where
start. Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
much more comfortable. You don't have to really dive in and,
Yeah.
and disclose anything too
Yeah.
personal, but a conversation that I had recently, I learned that just because you're going a little bit deeper
Uh-huh.
in conversation doesn't necessarily mean that you need to reveal your deepest,
Yeah.
darkest secrets. You can
Yeah.
relate to
It's still a
people.
professional platform. Yeah.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
still a professional
Yeah.
platform, but there are ways, like you said, that you can share some of that personal piece and really start to relate to people on a completely different level. And I can imagine if I couldn't get brave enough to do that and anybody else,
Yeah.
your content would start to take off a little bit more because people can actually relate to that because it's real. It's real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. People connect with people, right? So
Yeah.
when you can show who you are, yeah, it'll just you'll see many benefits and just more connections, more quality connections, more opportunities, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned this already as well, but it's another issue that's super frustrating for a lot of people
Yeah.
is that lack of engagement right away. And I saw that too, when I first started posting, and I really messed it up because I was just using ChatGPT right when I started posting and not putting any. I was like, I'm just going to put as much educational content out as I
Yeah.
possibly can. And
Yeah.
then it was like just feels like you're spinning your wheels because people don't relate to that, right? You need
Yeah.
to humanize it. You can
Yeah.
use ChatGPT to think about ideas and whatnot, but
Yeah.
for me, I was like, I am a better writer when I'm really sit down and think about communicating. Okay, what's going
Yeah.
on inside of my head, and more people are probably going to relate to that. So personally, I have spent hours creating original content and really getting no engagement at first. And like you said, a lot of people can probably relate to that. What are some strategies to encourage that engagement with your content?
The main thing I would say is to always have some sort of CTA or action at the end,
Mm,
or just, somewhere throughout your post. Maybe it's usually
yeah.
at the end for me, because a lot of people still don't know sort of the rules to engage on LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
I've had people who have said to me before, oh, I have seen other people post and I have something to say,
Hmm.
but I don't know them and I don't want to be weird just popping into their comments
Yeah.
and they haven't actually invited me in. So I think that is a really important thing, just having some sort of question. Do you agree? What would you add to this list? Do you disagree? What has your experience been like?
Mhm.
Anything that shows that, okay, I'm open to hearing from people who I haven't actually met before. I think that's really important. And then I think another important thing that people should keep in mind is when you do get that comment or that engagement is to respond and
Mhm.
reply and interact. Don't just leave a comment sitting
Yeah.
there. Create some conversation, some back and forth. So I think as a general rule of thumb, I know we were talking about algorithm hacks and things like that. As a general rule of thumb, LinkedIn is a platform, as I said before, they want the conversations, they want the community. So comments are a good indicator that, and back and forth comments specifically are a good indicator that, okay, this post is resonating, there's conversation
Mhm.
happening, people are connecting. I think, for the algorithm purpose, that's great, but also for your relationship goals, that is going to be key to showing people that they're not just commenting and it's a
Mhm.
black hole, black abyss, and they're like, did this person see it? like as you start responding, people are going to be more inclined to jump in again and to continue
Hmm.
jumping in, and then you develop a relationship and a rapport that way, and maybe that eventually leads to a call, right? Like Mary, you commented on my post a lot, and then now we're on a podcast together, and
Hmm.
I'm sure we'll be keeping in touch, and and then our networks will just, things get more interwoven, and then you
Hmm.
comment on my things, and then your network sees it, and then I comment
Yeah.
on your things, etc. So
Yeah.
sort of grows that way, but it's really about engaging, and
Hmm.
then also inviting in that engagement.
Yeah, I love the idea of a call to action because I think that a lot of people do forget about that, and I can see that that some of my posts do get a lot of impressions. And I'm like, why aren't you people liking it or commenting on it? And
Yeah,
maybe, having a better call to action would be something that you could implement to
yeah,
really boost that engagement.
yeah.
So we've talked a little bit already about the personalizing the
Uh-huh.
stories that we
Yes.
post on LinkedIn. Could you give an example of, how you highlight your own personal brand or maybe even a specific post that just performed really well and why you think that is?
Hmm. I think my most recent posts around introversion have done really well,
Hmm.
and I feel like they've done well because it's a usually a combination of me touching on maybe a challenge or a misconception that introverts face. So I think emotionally there's like that connection there. And then I always try to show maybe how that thing isn't true, or just have like a positive spin, or just showing my experience at, like how I've been able to sort of leverage it. So it's like misconception, and then how this is actually like a strength. And so I feel like that probably touches on something that many introverts feel
Hmm.
emotionally. And so again, I think that that's why it resonates. And yeah, so I would say it's just, yeah, really touching in on like a human emotion, and then also having a positive perspective, and like an uplifting one, I think people appreciate as well. So, and of course, not everything has to be positive. Like I've talked about my layoff
Hmm.
before and haven't necessarily had a, positive sort of spin on it, just like kind of keeping it real.
Yeah.
But I think for the introversion posts, that is an example of ones that have really resonated, and the reason why I think they might have, yeah.
Yeah, I think that any type of personal post or anything that really creates some sort of an emotion can get,
Mhm.
that engaged response, whether it's a positive
People, yeah,
emotion or a negative emotion, people
exactly.
connect to that on another level.
Yeah, yeah. And I see posts about like return to work, or rather
Hmm.
remote work, or both remote work or return
Yeah.
to work,
Yep.
and or return to office rather. And I mean, those are
Hmm.
people get fired up, right? Because
Oh yeah.
people have strong opinions on topics like
Oh,
that.
for
So
sure. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. So it doesn't have to be something about your personality necessarily, but it can be, just anything that people have an opinion on. It's good to try to take a stance where you can on LinkedIn, and if
Hmm.
you're trying to get again more engagement, more
Hmm.
people sort of contributing, agreeing, or disagreeing.
Yep. Yeah, and so, and like I mentioned earlier, I guess, at the beginning of our conversation, how LinkedIn's kind of evolved over time. And originally it seemed to me to be a platform for job seekers, but like we said, it's really changed a lot over the years. And
Yeah.
I work with a lot of executive level clients, and recently they've come to me to optimize their profile, and many of them having employers that are encouraging them to jump on and post, right? And
Oh,
they're really
good. That's great.
hesitant to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing, and
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people don't really understand the power of LinkedIn, especially if you
Yeah.
don't spend a lot of time on there.
Yeah.
And so their employers want them to talk about, their companies, right?
Mhm.
Highlights, new products, feature releases, news, everything like that, and they just don't know where to start. How can a seasoned professional like that use LinkedIn to really stay relevant in their field, share their expertise, and establish themselves as a thought leader?
So the first thing I would say is I love that the companies are supporting their employees, because I feel like that's just a big game changer. I always say that
Yeah.
most forward-thinking companies are the ones that realize that LinkedIn is very valuable, and just because your employee is posting on LinkedIn doesn't mean they're looking for another job, so
Yeah.
nothing to be nervous
Yep.
about. So I think that's really great. I would say when posting on LinkedIn, and you mentioned the company wants them to start promoting launches and things like that, probably want to keep those sort of promotional posts to like 25% of your content, because if people know that all you do is talk about the company or talk about the new product launches, it gets kind of tiring after a while, right? No one likes to be kind of promoted to all the time. I talked earlier about when you're coming up with your content calendar, figuring out what you're talking about each day. And I think that advice rings true in terms of thought leadership and sort of your areas of expertise. So if you are an executive leader, as you said, what are the topics that you're really passionate about speaking on? What do people turn to you for? And ideally, what kind of aligns with the company? So if you are a chief people officer, for example, one day will probably maybe want to be something around company culture. Another day might be around talking about, maybe you're like you love giving love talking about feedback and like performance reviews. That could be another area of expertise. Another could be even just like leading teams, like you have a big team, how can we create collaborative teams? So it's about the combination of your passion, your expertise, and then of course it has to sort of make sense with the company too. Well, it doesn't have to, but I think probably as an executive there's going to be some alignment there, wanting to
Yeah.
make sure yeah, it makes sense there. But that's how I would start thinking about it.
Yeah, wonderful. So, what are the top 3 things that our listeners should do this week to supercharge their professional presence on LinkedIn?
Yes. So um, I would say optimize your profile. So go through it all, make sure it's representing you in the best way. And I think we didn't touch on this yet, but when I talk about presence, I mean it
Mm-hmm.
in both senses of the word. So presence, I think when people usually talk about it, it's more traditional. Things like executive presence, how others see you. Presence in terms of where others see you is also really important. So where are you being seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your presence when we are not face to face with someone? And so LinkedIn is, of course, a big piece of that. It's the virtual office. It's going to be where a lot of people look first to decide, is this person legit? Like, who are they? What are
Mm-hmm.
they about? So just being aware that presence is holistically all of these things. So I think working on your headline, or sorry, excuse me, working on your whole profile first is going to be key. I would probably start commenting
Mm-hmm.
next once you have the profile down. And then I would start thinking about what your areas of expertise are, right? And I think thinking through, you can think about some of what we talked about before, the current and future, like the adjectives that describe
Mm-hmm.
you, that can also help inform maybe the content that you're going to be writing about. But I think, and again, you don't have to jump in this week and start posting, but just starting to think about it and just like noodle
Mm-hmm.
on it and start maybe observing people on the platform and seeing how they do it. I think that's a great first step.
What are you working on right now, and where can we find you online?
Yeah, so definitely you can find me on LinkedIn. I hope that all your listeners will add me there and follow me. So it's at Lorraine K. Lee. And my website, also lorrainekaylee.com. I have some free resources on there as well, including actually background photo templates. So for the
Mm.
non-designers in the group, such
Mm-hmm.
as myself, I encourage you to grab those and just, kind of fill in the
Yep.
missing information and yeah, and update your LinkedIn that way. And then I continue to speak and train on topics like LinkedIn and as well as other career leadership management topics. So if anyone's interested in bringing me in as a speaker or trainer, don't hesitate to reach out. And then I also do some consulting. And then, as you said, I teach LinkedIn Learning. I also have a Stanford Continuing Studies course coming out this fall around the art of public speaking. So if anyone's interested in learning more there, you can learn with me, and I'll be teaching a class there.
Wonderful. Everybody follow Lorraine on LinkedIn. She's a must follow. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks for listening. I will be releasing episodes every Monday, so be sure to subscribe on the platform that you are watching this, give it a 5-star review, and we'll see you next time.